Hey, Marie. Hey, Kay. With that, I'll hand it over
Hey,
to you.
awesome. Thanks so much, David. So I'm Marie Poulin. I'm the co-founder of Okie Dokie. We're a small digital agency that I run with my partner, Ben. We're now a team of 4 full-time employees. And for the last 2 years, our business has been almost entirely focused on helping people tame their work and life chaos through our online training program, Notion Mastery. Today, I'm going to share my love of dashboards and focus on some of the more advanced ways that I use Notion across both personal and work. I also want to share that the design of my dashboards and databases are very much influenced by the fact that I am a designer that has ADHD. And the reason I think this is important to bring up is that I think what works for one person definitely does not work for everyone. And my space is very much tailored to my brain and how I show up in the world. Notion was the first tool I found that gave me that ridiculous flexibility that I needed. I think it's just such a powerful tool. I think it's super ADHD friendly. Excited to share a little bit about that. It helps you design spaces that just really make sense for your unique needs and preferences. So take inspiration today, but don't forget to make it your own. And Kay is going to kick things off. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Kay.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you, David. Thank you all who are watching us today. I'm honored to be here. A little bit about me. My name is Khe Hy. I'm the founder and CEO of Radworks, and we have a simple mission. We help people lead more productive, examined, and joyful lives. And how do we do that? Well, we use Notion, but we also have two businesses around this philosophy. The first is an online course called Supercharge Your Productivity, which is one of the world's most popular Notion courses, and 550 students have built entire life dashboards to help them lead more productive, examined, and joyful lives. Then we have the Rad Studio, which is our consulting business, where our students came to us and said, hey, can you teach my company how to do this? And so we launched our Notion consulting business. Our activities are supported by a blog, an email newsletter, and an online community of over 30,000 professionals. And of course, Notion powers everything we do. It's how we work internally, it's what we teach, and it's what we implement at companies. So today we're going to I will walk you through our setup. And we're basically a bunch of productivity nerds. And so we're going to show you two key parts of our workflow where we fully integrate tasks, documents, wikis, calendars, and much of our internal communication. Here's a little secret. We don't use email internally, and we barely check Slack. Why? Because we've streamlined all of our communications through Notion. Now, there's two things, as we were building this setup, there were two things that we wanted to really avoid. The first, I know you're with me on this, the fire hose of notifications, pings, dings, swipes, all of that noise. It leads to content grazing or work grazing when you're just popping in and out of one thing and the lack of ability to do any deep work. So we really wanted to avoid that because we all know that every time you change context, it could take you up to 20 minutes to get back to your original task. The second thing we wanted to avoid was the bottomless email thread. You've all seen this Franken monster of an email. It's part email, part Google Doc, part to-do list with a lot of noise. Now, we want to make sure that we had this streamlined communication so that we always knew what the expectations were and to make sure that you never had to worry about dropping the ball. So with that, I'm going to drop us into our Rad HQ. So like I said, here you have tasks, you have documents, and you have all of our in-app communication. So I'm going to start you off by showing, we have a customized prioritization framework. It's called the 10K work framework. And we basically think of all of our tasks across 4 quadrants, 10, 100, 1,000, 10K, which is the combination of skill and leverage. And I say this because it shows how you can take your own frameworks and customize it exactly to your workflow. So now I'll scroll over here and you'll see that we have a quick capture box. So this is for, if you're familiar with David Allen's GTD philosophy, ideas are coming, thought fragments are coming, these open loops, and you want to grab ideas, you want to grab tasks and quickly put them in. So I pop in here and hit this new button, and you'll see right below I can add my tasks. So I might want to do research feedback software. Pardon the typos. Research feedback software, and right away here I can assign it a different prioritization. So that might be a $100 task, right? And I can X out here. You'll also see, oh, if I wanted to assign something to my colleague, I can assign a task to David. There's Mr. Tibbetts, looking handsome. Hi, David. Typing in front of so many people is nerve-wracking. All right. So that is a quick capture inbox, which again lets us use different templates to customize the types of tasks that we want to do, so that we want to assign. So I'll take you down to our task dashboard. Now this is akin to a ClickUp or an Asana or any project management software. We have built it entirely from scratch. And you can see here that you have the columns that you are familiar with, right? You have the checkbox to indicate whether the task is done or not. You have the actual task itself, and you can see we have our prioritization markers here. These are visual cues. Due dates, DO dates. We use energy levels and contexts. Again, this is metadata or tags assigned that come to us from GTD philosophy. Now, I want to show you, you might be looking at this database and say, wait, this looks a little bit different from our typical view. And that's because I got some advanced access to the Notion's new database features. And I'm going to show you how to use these filters. Let me zoom in my screen by 2 clicks. All right, so this is our dashboard. Now I'm going to take you into my favorite view. I call this the 10K group view. And what you can see here, let me collapse these toggles. So again, remember, this is our internal prioritization framework. 10, 1, 100, 10K to 1K, 100, 10. Now, 10K is obviously the most important task for me. So I'll get in, sit down at my desk in the morning, and I'll pop into the 10K tasks. Brainstorm partnership, review job posting, create outline for all hands meeting. You can see here that these are linked to different projects. We call them foundations. And again, you have our customized metadata. So as I go through my day, I'm scrolling through from my highest priority to my medium priority. And then, I'm a morning person. So after that time when you want a cookie at 2 o'clock and a Diet Coke, I'll pop into my $10 task and I'll see, oh, I need to reorganize my Google Drive. That seems like a good afternoon task. Next, I'll take you to our calendar view. Now, calendar view shows me that exact same set of data, but just visually on a calendar. So again, you can see here, I can plan my week based on the different things that I have going on. A bunch of things due tomorrow, and then some due next week. Next, I will take you to due soon. Like, what is due soon? It's exactly what I just showed you visually, but this is based on the due dates and it's in the table view. Now here I'll use the opportunity to pop into the filters. So you could see here that I have a filter set up. I have 2 rules set up that only show me a task that is incomplete and that is due within the next week. So if I have something due in 2 months, it won't show up in the due soon window. Lastly, we have overdue tasks. And you'll see that there are these 2 tasks that were due on January 25th and January 21st and February 14th, and they are marked as overdue. And if you look at overdue, I'll click in here. This is a simple nested if statement that just shows me this red flag if something is overdue. So that is the task dashboard that we use. Now I'm going to flip us over to the document dashboard. Now remember, the document dashboard is where you avoid those Frankenmonster Gmail threads where people are commenting in blue, people are assigning you tasks and you have no idea if it's done or not. So I go into my document dashboard and what do I see? I see the type of document you have. This is a brainstorm. This is documentation. This is ongoing research for OKR alternatives. Once again, you see the foundation, right? What project does this roll up to? And this is a beautiful thing because tasks and documents can roll up to the same project without having to leave the app. Normally you'd have one in your task manager and one in Google Docs. Now they all live in the same place. So that's the foundation. And again, there's an expectation. We are very, very clear on setting transparent expectations. I need you to review this document by March 3rd. David has asked me to review our company values version 2 and the communications policy. Next, you see who are the stakeholders, who's this document relevant to. So I'm going to pop in to our company values. I open company values, and this is a brainstorm that was initiated by David. And you could see here, he says, Khe Hy, could you please comment on innovation and humility? Okay, I scan innovation and humility, and then I'll just respond to David. David looks great. Hit enter. I go back into my workspace. So look what happens. I commented on the document, company values. I go into this reviewed by field. I select Khe Hy. Boom, it's gone. I clear out my document inbox. I'll do that again. We have a communications policy. How do we use Slack? I scan through here. Everything looks good. Actually, it doesn't require any more changes. I go back into this reviewed by section, pop in my name, boom, out of my inbox. And so every day I'm just checking my task inbox and I'm checking my document inbox. Now I wanted to show you how we actually do this, right? This is set up using using the powerful column or property that enables us to tag people in our workspace, but it also uses a few rules. Once again, I'll click into the rule here, and you'll see that the rule says, let me know which documents need to be reviewed within the next week. So again, don't show me something that's due 2 months from now, where it's assigned to me and I haven't reviewed it yet, right? So that is the rule. Again, you'll get used to using these nested filters with a little practice. And then we have two sorts, sort by review date and sort by ascending date. All right. Next up, we will go to, what if I wanted to see all of my documents, right? So I'll go to Documents, View All. So now this gives me a full perspective of all of the documents that I've worked on or that are in my workspace. Lastly, we have recently modified. So I love to use, this is a kind of a Notion power trick. I love to sort documents by recently modified and have the most recently modified to the top. That way it's always bubbling things up to the top that are most recently relevant to you. So again, you can see if I zoom back out, we have a capture, we have the framework that lets us customize everything to our style of working. We have a quick capture that allows us to use templates to do recurring tasks, low value tasks, high value tasks, or just saying hello to David. We then have a bunch of different views, and every team member of mine has their own dashboard like this. And once we get to the document dashboard, this is how we are able to never be inside Gmail, Google Docs. We don't use Google Docs, or to even spend much time in Slack, because all of the documentation takes place inside this document dashboard. So before I jump into Q&A, I just want to wrap. And I thank you for attending our session. What we have built here is a system that works for us that capitalizes on remote work. It takes the strengths of remote and hybrid work, asynchronous communication, and putting all tools into one place. It cuts out the noise so that we can focus on what matters most and we can smile more. With that, I will open up to the Q&A. All right. So I will go through the questions. The first question, when switching from Asana to Notion, easy notifications for tasks being assigned is something I found difficult to grasp and get a hold of. Any tips for going all in on Notion as a task management system? And so the question is, it's hard to keep track of the notifications and of the tasks if you go all in for Notion. What tips do you have? And so this is a question that we commonly get asked in our consulting business. And I would say that there's a few ways to handle this. One is to really create these customized dashboards that are based on different, like who it's assigned to, who it's assigned from. That way, if you miss the notification, it will still show up in your document inbox, right? Because if something's due for me, if David were to assign me a document, it would just pop up in my document dashboard. So that involves setting up the right dashboards based on your workflows, and then having the behavior change to go in and check the document dashboard. The other thing that it does is you absolutely need to have kind of an internal manual on how the workflow happens. So documentation to support your work processes. The next question is, are you using Notion pages as actual client deliverables? So we are using Notion pages. So we use Notion to deliver proposals and so on to our clients. But then in our consulting business, we actually get granted permission to enter our clients' workspaces, and we will build the different databases for them, and then we will pop out. So it's a mix of both. I know we used to do a lot of coaching and teaching. We'll use Notion to create wikis, to create reading lists, to create mini task lists that are client facing, thanks to the ease of Notion's sharing abilities. Next question. What's something you wish you would have known when you started building your system in Notion? Wow, that is a wonderful question. I think it comes back to being clear on your architecture, right? I think a lot of people will get a new tool. They might have a slightly disjointed process where they haven't tied their goals precisely to their projects, or they actually haven't organized their projects to be consistent with their document hierarchies. And so they just like get a new tool thinking that all of that will just resolve itself. Like your documents will magically end up in the right place. I think so if anything, we have stepped back, a lot of Miro charts, a lot of documentation about process, and then gone in to the architecture. I've got a few more minutes for questions. So could you talk a little bit more about the difference between those templates you showed us? What's the difference between a 1K task and a 10K task? Oh, that's a wonderful question. And I will go back here. We've spent entire days talking about this framework, so it wouldn't do it justice. But we basically have two vertices: leverage, low leverage, high leverage, and then low skill, high skill. And so what it basically does, so $10 work is like checking email. $100 work is it's like building systems, second brains, GTD, Notion, customizing Notion. And then $1,000 work is what you get paid for, right? That's your unique skill. Are you an engineer? Are you an investor? Are you a lawyer? Are you a doctor? 10K work is, how do you scale your unique skill? If you're a phenomenal engineer, you still have to write code for your company to reap the benefits. But so the 10K question becomes, well, how do I achieve leverage there? You can train people, you can mentor people, you can recruit, you can create your own philosophy, right? Think of like something like GTD, which I've mentioned many times. That was a philosophy that was architected and that turned into something that people talk about, right? So that's how do you inject leverage into your workflows. And so that is the framework. It arose from a frustration with the Eisenhower matrix, where everything landed in that one box of important and urgent. And you're like, okay, now what do I do? All right, last question. What advice do you have when creating a task database's properties? Which properties are important to start with? How can I ensure to capture what's important for my team to see? Great question. So I would always, if you're new, always start with less. It's much easier to add from very little than to reduce from a lot of kind of misused properties. And I recommend doing a regular audit. Columns to use, I would use some kind of prioritization. Use your own prioritization. use a DUE date. We use due dates to help time work. And then maybe a few tags so that you can kind of filter and sort. But again, don't go crazy with the tags. And then obviously you need a parent, right? What does this task roll up to? What project does it roll up to? What goal does it roll up to? That's where the architecture becomes a little bit, that's where the architecture really starts to matter, because you need to have a philosophy that underpins your framework. But again, I would use prioritization, due date, maybe a few tags, and then make sure that it rolls up to the right projects and so on. With that, we have wrapped up my section, but there is no one who knows Notion better than our next speaker, my dear friend, a source of inspiration, Marie Poulin. Take it over.
That. And even I still get inspired every time I look at other people's workspaces. So today I want to take a quick high-level overview of my space. And because today's session is taking Notion to the max, I'm not going to get too much into the how-to, but I really want to show you just some of the ways, again, that you can really customize Notion to your own brain. So again, I mentioned that I have ADHD, which means so much of my workspace is really geared around helping put guardrails and helping Marie complete the projects and tasks that she puts on her plate. So I'm starting off here. I'm going to show you that for the most part, I am always working from dashboards, and there's only a few pages that I'm spending the majority of my time on inside my Notion workspace. So pretty similar to Khe, we've got this sort of team hub, if you will, the Okie Dokie workspace, kind of similar to the Rad Reads page. We've got a shared household because I do share this workspace with my husband and our other full-time team members. So this is definitely a blended workspace, working with our employees and our contractors, as well as really a personal development space. And I very much see Notion as a tool for emotional regulation as much as it is for productivity. So I'm a big fan of using Notion for personal development and exploration, learning about yourself, and it's a place of curiosity. I very much see it as a digital garden that is always kind of adapting and changing to my needs over time. So we've got our shared household stuff. We've got our personal HQ, which contains all of the pages related to my own personal development, my own hobbies and leisure, etc. I'm going to dive into that in a little bit. And then we have this Horizon system. So what you're seeing right now is the Today page in the Horizon system. This is the way that I break up information. And again, this is very, very helpful for the ADHD brain. There can be a little bit of time blindness. Maybe some of you here also experience this, that difficulty of seeing time. It's a challenge. And so I've actually kind of forced myself to view my tasks and my goals and things in terms of these different time horizons, because I don't need to see all of my goals at the daily level. And I don't need to see tasks when I'm doing my quarterly or sort of yearly visioning process. So each of these different pages, it's sort of like a dashboard of dashboards, an integrated system. And these pages integrate both personal and business tasks together. So you can see here, there's some similarities with Khe's setup here. I can see my tasks today. I like to use the Pomodoro method. So I've got little tomatoes here, just to show you again that you can use whatever kind of visuals make sense for your brain. As a very visual person, I'm big on using color to signify things for me, custom icon system. So you can see anytime we've got a purple little speech icon here, I know that that's an event. I know that anything with a green checkbox is deep work. I know orange is administrative work. So there's lots of color stuff happening here to kind of prime my brain and help me get really, really focused. So one of the major differences that I want to point out with my system, and I love how Khe does his around this sort of idea of 10K work and 1K work and just being really focused on what's going to move the needle. For me, so much of my workspace is based around energy levels, because unfortunately, I'm often at the whims of my impulses or how much energy I have. And so a lot of how I think about my tasks is, how much energy do I have today? What's the first thing I need to do? How do I create momentum for myself? And doing the most difficult thing at the beginning of the day, that whole concept of eat the frog, really does not work for me. I need to build momentum up. And so at the core is a theming system. So I've decided in advance which days of the week am I doing what activities and how am I spending my time. So you'll see here, I've got my actions database similar to how Kay did, but instead of having documents, I actually like to include my journal. I have been journaling every day for nearly 1,200 days in a row, and I have not missed a day. And the reason is because this is always in my face. I have the things I need to do today and how I felt about it on the left-hand side. It's always there. It's quickly accessible. I can check things off as I go throughout my day. It's a reminder of what's most important. So I'm just going to open up the journal just to show you what this looks like. For some people, this is going to feel like overkill. It's going to feel quite overwhelming. But again, this is very much designed for my brain. I love the ability to track so many details and so many interesting connections over time. It helps me do better planning in the long term. So an example of some of the things that I track, at the beginning of the day, I will set an intention for the day. Let's say I'll do my best to lead by example. I track my feelings. So maybe today I'm feeling pretty excited. And throughout the day, I will fill that out, and I do 3 feelings every day. My win the day task, I try to put only one thing in there every single day. What's the one thing that I can check off as a win the day activity? Today, that's going to be block by block. And you're going to notice there's a couple roll-ups happening here, and that's because when I make a new journal entry, it's using a theme. And so I have a theme of Wednesday where in the morning I'm teaching and I'm doing process-driven work. If anybody has read the book Work Clean or Everything in Its Place, I love that book. It's so applicable to Notion. I could nerd out about that. And my PM focus is on immersive work, so that deep work. And so again, this just primes my brain, reminds me what I'm meant to focus on, and gives me a little bit of guardrails. When I get testimonials or people sending me kind words, I attach that to love notes. I track my activity here. So let's say I do some online dancing here. I'm going to add Steezy for today. If there's any articles or anything that I'm reading, anything I'm focused on, online courses, that's a link to my library, which is probably one of the biggest databases in my workspace. Notes and ideas, supplements, you get the idea. I think Frances went into quite a bit of detail about her journaling as well, but it's really easy for me to add this information here. And I encourage people to only track what makes sense for you. Again, this might feel quite overwhelming to some folks, but I really love to gain insight over time and by really regularly filling out this journal. One of my favorite parts of this journal is a link to a practices database. So this is a database that has a number of ideas for what it means to live a good life and to do these daily practices. And the more that I add these, let's say I did these today, I'm going to keep clicking on a few. So I usually would do this at the end of the day, and you'll see a score starts to fill out because I've given these a value. And for things that I want to incentivize myself to do more of, so do more deep work sessions, for example, maybe that's a more valuable activity, that's going to have a higher score. And so ideally, I want to hit 100 points in a day, and that's going to show me that I had a really good day. I followed through on a lot of those important practices that are going to help me live my best life. And if the score is a bit low, you can see it says, are you okay? Maybe you need a little extra love today. And I kind of give myself some cheering messages as well. I track gratitude, wins, challenges, entertainment database improvement. So you get the idea. And so this is a big core part of my workspace. But one thing I want to draw your attention to is this idea of theming, because theming shows up across my whole workspace. You can see tasks are organized in a way by focus theme. So I can hide this and say, I want to complete just my process-driven tasks. Those are the more administrative sort of manager tasks. Or I can open up and show, okay, it's time to do my deep work today. And that's just how I contextualize my tasks. I need to think about it in terms of energy. And so just wanted to remind people that you don't have to follow someone else's productivity system. If you don't think about time in the same way, or maybe your work isn't quite as date driven, and that can be a little bit challenging when you have to make your own dates. So this is sort of how I think about it. One of the other things too I have here is I have a lot of options for myself for how I want to view this information, because my mood can change from day to day, even from morning to afternoon, and I give myself some options. So the very first default view that I have is top priority projects. The filter on this is a little bit complex. I'm not going to go too far into detail about this, but I'm going to show you what this means. And what's happening here is that I'm seeing only tasks from projects that have been marked as high priority and where the theme day is marked today. And so what that means is I've decided in advance block by block is something that happens on Wednesdays and Tuesdays, it's going to show up here. And I'm going to show you what this looks like. So content creation is a project. It's marked as high priority. And I can see the focus day is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And there's a theme check happening. So there's a lookup happening to that focus database here that's saying, yes, it's Wednesday. So yes, you are good to go. This project has been assigned to this day of the week. That means any tasks are going to show up here. Anything that is not associated with a project that is intended for Wednesday is not going to show up here. Once I've done those, because these are the most important projects, and let's say, yes, I did block by block, yes. Then I could move to a more flexible view if I want to, that might include more items, things that are due this week, things that might be overdue, and I can give myself some options based on how I'm feeling today. If you're feeling really overwhelmed, I can go right to that focus view here. So it gives me a lot of options here. So this is just one way that I use and think about my task management. It's very energy driven. Really quickly going to show you what it looks like at the weekly level. So you can see it's pretty similar. And there's this synced block database. So each of these pages are kind of linked together through this synced block. And that's just text that I link to a page. So it's pretty simple. And you'll see how many different pages actually have this navigation. So I'm a big fan of bringing that information to you. I do not want to be clicking around my Notion workspace to find things. I'm bringing that information to me. And so I've got these themed days here. Again, I theme everything. I theme my years, my months, my days. It is very helpful to me personally. And I'm just going to scroll down and show you what this looks like, because most of the work around this deciding happens at the weekly level, at the weekly review. So I've incentivized myself to do this weekly review because it really sets me up for success here. And so one of the things I do here is I have this daily themes database. Now, again, I want to acknowledge for new Notion users, this might feel super overwhelming, but it's more just to show you what is possible and just how deeply you can customize this to your own needs. I'm going to open up one of these themes here. And just want to check you can still see me. I know part of my screen is frozen there, so I can't see my own feed. So David, just give me the thumbs up if that's still good. So here's what Wednesday looks like. I've got my morning theme, PM themes. I've got a relation to my projects database, my journal, recurring tasks. This is a link to my actions database, learning. And again, I try to theme certain days of the week where I can do certain courses, and the activities as options. There's even a little celebration GIF at the bottom too that I use in other places. I won't have time to today. But what I do is when I sign up for a new course, for example, I'm doing this Marketing 201. I know that that's a Tuesday thing that I'm going to be doing. I've got calls every Tuesday, Marketing 201. I can add that there. And that's going to show up for me whenever I'm looking at tasks that align with that day of the week. I can still view things more flexibly if I want to, but this is kind of the starting point, deciding in advance what is most important. So I don't have to do this from a daily level. I've decided once in advance, and then I can be off to the races in my workspace. So this is just a little bit more on the project management side, but really quickly, I wanted to show you an example of a more personal use case inside of my Notion workspace. So this is my personal dashboard. And for anyone that's familiar with building a second brain and Tiago's para method, these are basically my life areas. And all of these are a series of dashboards that remix databases that live elsewhere. So the projects database, goals database, library, notes and ideas, you're going to see those over and over again in different parts of my workspace. So I'm going to jump into this one just to show you what it can look like. Permaculture is the way that I actually found Notion. I needed a place to store all of my messy thinking when I was doing my permaculture design certificate. So you'll see here, this is a goals database that is actually a team-wide shared database, but I've actually hidden these items so other team members can't actually see these more personal goals. And I just wanted to share that as an example for some of you that are also kind of wondering how much of my stuff should be shared and personal. How do I set this up? You can actually use the same databases, but adjust your sharing permissions. So one example here is become a master gardener. I just want to quickly show you what this looks like here. It's restricted, so nobody at the company can see it except for me. And that database is still accessible to everyone. They just won't see that entry in the database. Here I've got projects. And again, these are filtered just to permaculture. And then you'll see I've got a number of really contextual databases that are relevant just to this page. So really, this page started out as a big sort of research project. It was an 18-month-long project. And so as a very visual person, I like being able to see these things and designing them in a way that really makes sense to my brain. I can open these up and look at the concept. Okay, designing from patterns to details. I've got these little prompts. I'm linking it to design methods. I also love that it's very meta from a Notion perspective, because I think people should design their Notion spaces from the pattern level before worrying about the details. So I just wanted to show an example of kind of what this can look like and how easy it is to actually pull in and remix databases that live elsewhere. So here's an example of my library. Again, this is a team-wide shared database. Everyone has access to this. And all I'm doing here is filtering this to topics contain permaculture. If I just open up one of these notes to show you what this looks like, you can see topics and tags as permaculture. I can see the author. I can see what projects it connects to, and just really quickly just show you what it looks like to open a tag. I can open the tag of permaculture and see the skills it relates to, the people it relates to, notes and ideas, other library items. And there's quite a few things here that can help with content creation, pulling words of wisdom whenever you're reading a book. And so this is just one example of how, again, you can kind of move your databases around. You can decide what databases make the most sense here. I'm going to show you really quickly an example of what it looks like to bring in a database that lives elsewhere. So using Notion's / command, I type in CR, create linked database, and I'm going to pull in the zones database from my garden. And here we go. I can access this information here. Wrap the cells, I can move things around. You get the idea. So I know we're kind of at time now, and I think we'll move into some Q&A, but I just wanted to give you an idea of just some of the ways that I use Notion, both for going deep into these personal use cases, as well as from a project management perspective. My whole life and business are inside of Notion, and this is how I see the world. So let's jump into some Q&A. We've got some good questions here. Awesome. Okay, so from Ollie, I'm so happy to hear you mention designing for your ADHD brain. Could you share more about how you approached building this out for yourself? What advice would you give to people with brains like yours trying to build your personal productivity system? Such a great question. I will say, I think one thing people get stuck with is they want to get their Notion space perfect. It can be kind of paralyzing. People want to set it up the right way right out of the gate. And I really, again, see Notion as this digital garden that does get more useful and stronger the more that you use it. So part of me encourages people to explore. That permaculture page that you saw was just one big page of notes before. There were no databases before when I first started using Notion. So I was just kind of remixing, throwing links in there, just taking free form notes. And it wasn't until I got a little bit more comfortable with databases that I started to merge that information into more structured formats. So I grew into my space. And I do encourage folks that you're going to figure out what works for you the more that you use your Notion workspace. So to not get too hung up on getting it perfect, be willing to explore a little bit and experiment, and show yourself some grace. And I think those weekly reviews are also so freaking helpful for noticing, where did I feel overwhelmed and why am I continuing to put too much on my plate? I have to be really, really sensitive to that, because I know that, and some of you here might experience those highs and lows that can happen with ADHD, where you are so crazy productive and you can do superhuman amounts of work in a really short amount of time. And then there's that crash that follows. So it's kind of about managing the dopamine, really. So give yourself some grace, notice what works, and don't be afraid to try something different. You can adopt pieces of people's systems, but don't be afraid to kind of mix it up and notice where there's tension for you personally. How do you schedule time to add all your tasks for the day, week, etc.? Is it a daily process? Yeah, so a lot of that will happen in the weekly review when I'm looking at, okay, what fell through the cracks this week? What's kind of still weighing on my mind? Doing that brain dump, getting it all out of your brain, adding it to your calendar. And then, of course, day to day things pop up, and really blocking in buffer time each week to make sure that you're giving yourself space to, tackle the tasks that do pop up and also kind of fall through the cracks during the week. Do you have any other tips and tricks like your synced block navigation bar that make your life easier on Notion? I mean, really, I use linked databases everywhere in my workspace, and I'm a big fan of just bringing that information to you so you don't have to kind of click around your workspace. Little tips and tricks, probably have to check out my YouTube channel, but yeah, I'm a big fan of synced blocks and kind of creating your own navigation. Daily journal has a lot of properties. How long does it take you to fill out? And do you fill it out every day? I don't fill out every property, I will say. There's the core ones that I always fill out, but no, I don't fill out everything if it's not relevant. And I would say it takes me 5 minutes. I see my journal as a bit more like a daily log than necessarily freeform journaling. You're welcome to do that in the body of the entry if you want, but it can take kind of as little time as you like. 2 minutes, you could absolutely get away with just kind of clicking all of those different properties and do a quick 2-minute thing. How long did it take you to build your daily journaling system? I mean, it evolved over time, right? So when I first set up my daily journal, there was no relations. It was just a couple things that I checked every day. And over time, I was like, okay, well, what do I want to track? What else is interesting to me? What else am I curious about? How do I want to notice where my time is being spent and how I feel about it and all of that. So I just love seeing it from a pattern level and also from tracking things like ADHD symptoms. So what kind of influences the way I might feel and feeling overwhelmed. So it definitely has evolved over time. What it looked like day one is very different than now. So I really do encourage folks to not feel like you have to kind of build it all up in one go. You kind of learn what you need and build as you go. Recommended books to learn from. Oh, so many good books. I really love that book. I think it's called Everything in Its Place. It used to be called Work Clean. I really adopted a lot of those principles into my Notion workspace. That's a good one. Start Finishing is another excellent book as well if anyone struggles with project and task management. And cool. I think we're sort of at the end of our session. So if you still have questions, just hit me up on Twitter at Marie Poulin. I'm always happy to answer this stuff and happy to record any YouTube videos if there are some specific requests. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you got some inspiration from this session and definitely enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks so much.